Hi, and welcome back. In what is becoming an all too familiar news story, another foreign backpacker was lured from Adelaide with the promise of work, only to endure an ordeal she will probably never fully recover from. Known only as Davine, the 24-year-old Belgium native was already a seasoned traveller. Like many in an era of cheap airfares and Airbnb, she had trekked the mountains of Central America, travelled around China, and visited South Africa to volunteer in wildlife parks. She was studying in Belgium and dreamed of working with animals, but in late 2016 she postponed her studies to tackle her biggest adventure yet, a backpacking trip around Australia. Arriving in Sydney on a 12-month working holiday visa, she embarked on a popular pilgrimage, a walk in the Blue Mountains, followed by a trip to Tasmania to see the island's famous wilderness, then back to Melbourne. By late January, she was en route to Adelaide and planned to tour Kangaroo Island before heading north to Central Australia. Although travelling alone, Davine felt secure. To her, Australia was a safe place. To qualify for a one-year visa extension, she needed to clock up 88 days of rural work, and a cousin told her she could find jobs on the Gumtree website. 2 months into her trip, she posted a notice seeking farm work or fruit picking, and almost immediately got a reply. It read, "Would you be interested in rearing baby calves on a farm 2.5 hours from Adelaide? Accommodation provided. My name is Max, and we will be working on one of many farms in South Australia owned by a company called Genesis Inc. The pay is $20 an hour." During their online exchanges, she told Max she was looking for 5 to 6 weeks' work, and he suggested she catch a bus to the town of Murray Bridge, an hour's drive southeast of Adelaide. He said one of their workers would pick her up and take her to one of the farms in Lameroo. On February 9th, she stepped off the coach in Murray Bridge on an oppressively hot morning to be met by a man dressed in black work pants and a grey singlet. He introduced himself as Max. He ushered her into a dusty red Hilux ute for the long drive to Lameroo. Unbeknownst to Davine, the man was actually driving her to Meningie. They headed out of town on a back road, past dairy farms and small settlements, until they came to a small town straddling a wide river, which they crossed on a 6-vehicle ferry. They passed more farms and endless scrubby flatlands until finally, after more than 2 hours, they drove through a steel cattle gate and up a dirt road to arrive at a low-slung, slender-block shed with a corrugated iron roof. It was an old pig shed. Max led her inside the shed's dingy interior. Walls streaked with bird feces, a dirt floor scattered with hay, a row of vacant animal stalls, and in one corner a grubby black sofa next to a dirty, disused refrigerator. There was no running water, no electricity, no toilet, and no bed. The realisation that she was expected to sleep here was still sinking in when Max said something strange and unexpected. He wanted to check the bottoms of her feet for needle marks, so he'd need her to lie face down on the sofa. Davine would later say she felt stupid and naive for allowing herself to be manipulated into such a dangerous situation. Because Max wasn't called Max. They weren't in Lameroo. There was no company called Genesis Inc., no network of farms employing backpackers. And when she lay on the sofa as instructed, she felt something hard pressed into her shoulder, and Max told her he had a gun, as he pulled her hands behind her back and bound them with cable ties. In the small fishing tourist town of Meningie on Lake Albert lived an often unemployed labourer named Jean Charles Bristow. He owned a small hobby farm on the outskirts of the town, where he lived with his wife of 25 years and his son and daughter-in-law. He was known around Meningie for his many disputes with past employers, including local farmers, the waste dump and the council, against whom he'd brought an unfair dismissal claim after being sacked. Bristow's farm ran 40 head of cattle and barely broke even. Yet in December 2016, just 60 kilometres up the coast from the infamous Salt Creek backpackers attack, and only 10 months after the Adelaide Advertiser revealed that Roman Hines used Gumtree to lure his victims to Salt Creek, Bristow logged on to Gumtree and began seeking female backpackers to come and work for him. He also began shopping on eBay, checking the price of shackles and on the sedative Rohypnol, eventually buying a fake gun and a set of novelty handcuffs. In the first week of February 2017, the 24-year-old Belgian backpacker took the bait. After binding her hands with cable ties, Bristow attached metal chains to her legs, rolled her onto her back, and began pulling her clothes off. Over the next 24 hours, he would strip her naked and sexually assault her several times, periodically leaving the shed only to return and assault her again. The filthy sofa she was shackled to sat on a metal grate, below which was a shallow pit designed to collect animal feces. Bees and flies buzzed incessantly around her, and she could only catch a glimpse of empty paddocks outside. Bristow told her he worked for an organisation that kidnapped women, and he was in league with local corrupt police. Attempting to escape was pointless, he warned, because the surrounding area was infested with snakes, and if recaptured, she would be dealt with even more harshly. Devine had no way of knowing that she was only a short walk from the farmhouse where Bristow's wife, son and daughter-in-law were going about their lives oblivious to her plight, but that she was only 500 metres from the main street of Meningie. As it grew dark, Bristow left Devine, now chained to the wall in the pig shed, and went back home to his wife and son. What he didn't know was that he'd left Devine in the same room as her backpack. He hadn't bothered to check it when he took her phone, but inside was her laptop and an internet dongle. With her one spare hand, Devine reached across to the old fridge and found a hook with which she was able to free herself from the chains. She grabbed her laptop and began messaging anyone she could think of over Facebook to let them know she'd been taken. She also managed to speak to a friend in Cairns who contacted the police. Devine also used Google to find a South Australian Police Association website, which she messaged the following: "Been kidnapped. Murray Bridge to Lameroo, I think. A cow farm. Crossed 2 ferries. Got my chains loose. Afraid to run away. He might chase and shoot me. Please help look for me. Please, I'm on a farm somewhere. He drives a red pickup." Too afraid she might be caught by the kidnapping ring if she tried to make it out alone, Davina reshackled herself and waited. Her messages were heard. By the next morning, as Bristow was feeding her breakfast and sexually assaulting her again, police planes were already circling the area, and Devine's face had been plastered on the front of the Advertiser newspaper. Later that day, Bristow was pulled over and catalogued by police near Meningie. Panicked, he returned to the farm and told Devine that they had to leave immediately. He shaved his head and dropped his captive at a motel in Murray Bridge, telling her she'd better leave the country. Too afraid to contact police in case they were in cahoots with the kidnapping ring, as Bristow had told her, Devine contacted her family to send money for a flight home to Belgium. But an off-duty police officer spotted her leaving the hotel to buy food. Jean Bristow was arrested the following morning. Bristow pled not guilty, telling the court that the woman legitimately worked on the farm, helping to look after cattle, and only wanted to leave because she couldn't handle the conditions. He testified that he asked the woman if the shed was okay to camp in, and that she replied that she had stayed in worse places during her travels. But Bristow's 22-year-old son, David, testified that the girl had never worked on the property, and that neither he nor his mother were even aware of her being there. The gun turned out to be a toy, and the kidnapping ring nothing more than a story. Bristow was found guilty of 1 count of aggravated kidnapping, 2 counts of rape, 2 counts of indecent assault, and 1 count of attempted rape, and sentenced to 18 years, with a 12-year non-parole period. He will become eligible for parole in 2029.
I regard you as a dangerous individual from whom the public should be protected. The court released chilling photographs of his tools and weapons of choice used to terrorise the young backpacker. During the trial, the victim returned to Adelaide to give evidence. During an emotional hearing, she said she felt like an animal or a slave. You expected her to use an animal grate as a toilet. You bound her, chained her hands and legs in what must have been a terrifying experience for her. The 26-year-old was lured there on the premise of doing farm work. It is impossible to understand how alone and devastated she must have felt as you humiliated and degraded her in a foreign country. Bristow's maintained his innocence, but the court heard his crimes were planned and premeditated, and he'd lied to justify his actions. The judge praised the courage of the woman throughout her ordeal, but said her road to recovery would be a long one. Bristow showed no emotion as he was jailed for 18 years. British-born, he's expected to be deported at the end of his sentence.
60 Minutes will air an exclusive documentary on Sunday. Here is a sneak peek.
The end of a hot summer's day in a paddock in remote South Australia.
Please help look for me.
From an isolated pig shed, a chilling cry for help.
I've been kidnapped in South Australia. Scared to run away.
Distressed messages from a terrified backpacker.
He would chase me down and shoot me.
That would travel around the world to her friends and her distraught family in Belgium.
The message was, I'm kidnapped.
Please, I'm on a farm somewhere. He drives a red pickup.
A red pickup. I'm scared. Has a gun. Will shoot me.
Please, contact the police and Mom.
I'm so far away from her and I didn't really know where she is.
Shackled and alone, Davine Arkins risked it all to break out of her chains, to grab her one fleeting chance to tell whoever was listening she was in the worst kind of trouble.
My first thought was just to send a message for help. I didn't really know where I was, where I should go to, who to trust.
Who did you send these messages to?
Everyone who was online.
A cow farm, across 2 ferries.
Tonight, inside the police investigation that captured a monster. How would you describe Davine's actions throughout this?
Courageous. Very courageous.
And this is the kidnapper, Jean Charles Bristow, now a prisoner himself. He is despised, especially by his 22-year-old son, David Bristow, who helped bring him to justice. If you had an opportunity to say something to him, what would it be?
Rock him out. You get what you deserve.
Please, please. I am so afraid.
Once again, thank you for watching, and a special thank you to our valued subscribers for keeping us going. Until next time.